There's a house buried inside a hillside in Wales that cost less than a used car to build. No mortgage, no bank, no construction crew. Just one guy, a chainsaw, a chisel, and about 3,000 pounds. And by the end of this video, I'm going to show you the one thing almost every Hobbit house video online will not tell you. The hidden catch that could turn your dream Shire home into a very expensive mistake. If you have ever daydreamed about disappearing into a round green door and never dealing with a 30-year mortgage again, hit subscribe right now because this channel breaks down real, honest numbers on alternative homes. No sponsors, no hype, just the truth. Now let's dig in literally. Hobbit houses are not just a movie set fantasy. They're a real, legitimate category of earth-sheltered homes. Tiny houses that are built into or covered by the earth itself, using soil and greenery on top to regulate the temperature inside. That means the ground itself becomes your insulation. In the summer, the earth keeps the inside cool. In the winter, it holds heat in. Builders line the structure with a waterproof shell, then bury it under a layer of soil that can support grass, flowers, even a small garden growing right on your roof. This is not a new idea either. Earth-sheltered buildings have been around for centuries, from turf-roofed homes in Scandinavia to dugout houses on the American prairie, built by settlers who had no lumber but plenty of dirt. What Tolkien did was take that ancient, practical style of building and wrap it in enough charm and story that an entire generation of eco-builders and DIYers decided they wanted to actually live it, not just read about it. It sounds like something out of Tolkien's imagination, and honestly, it kind of is. But real people are living in these homes right now, in 2026, and the numbers behind them are wild. Before we get into the money side of this, it is worth talking about what actually makes a Hobbit house look like a Hobbit house, because it is not just dirt on a roof. The signature feature is almost always the round door, usually painted green or a deep natural wood tone, set into a curved doorway that mimics the shape of the hill itself. Windows tend to be small, deep set, and circular or arched, which keeps heat loss to a minimum while still pulling in natural light. Inside, builders lean into low ceilings, curved walls, and exposed wood beams to keep that cozy, burrow-like feeling instead of making it feel like a basement. A lot of builders also add a skylight or two along the roofline, since natural light is one of the trickiest things to get right in a home that is partially or fully underground. And almost every one of these builds includes some kind of stone or wood-burning fireplace as a visual anchor, because nothing sells the fantasy faster than a crackling fire in a round stone hearth. Let's start with the most famous DIY Hobbit house on the internet. A man named Simon Dale, with zero training as a carpenter or architect, decided he was done with mortgage payments. So he found a plot of woodland in West Wales, and with help from his father-in-law and a few friends, he built an entire home into a hillside using a chainsaw, a hammer, and a single 1-inch chisel. The frame came from oak trimmings he gathered locally. The retaining walls were stone and mud. Straw bales insulated the floor, walls, and roof. The interior was finished with breathable lime plaster instead of standard Portland cement, which has a much lower environmental footprint and lets the walls breathe naturally instead of trapping moisture inside them. Nearly everything inside, the flooring, the fittings, the windows, was salvaged or repurposed. The total cost, around 3,000 British pounds. At current exchange rates, that lands right around 3,800 to 4,000 US dollars. It took about 4 months and around 1,500 man-hours to complete. A wood burner heats the home, solar panels provide electricity, and a clever underground air system keeps his refrigerator cool without using any extra power. Simon proved something that most people do not want to believe. You do not need an architecture degree, a massive loan, or a construction company to build a home that looks like it belongs in Middle-earth. Now here's a completely different approach. A woman named Christy Wolfe, who had already built off-grid tiny homes and tree houses, decided her next project would be a hobbit hole. She bought 5.5 acres of land near Orondo in the Chelan area of Washington state for $18,000 in a rural spot with rolling hills that looked like it belonged in the Shire. Unlike Simon's fully DIY build, Christie brought in excavators and outside help for the underground digging, since burying a structure into a hillside is far more technical than it looks in the movies. She built the home around a character concept, imagining a woodworking hobbit living there, and added details like a giant circular door made from a repurposed cable spool, deep-set windows, a stone fireplace, and a woodworking bench she still uses as a coffee bar for guests. She even built her own pull-chain toilet by hand to avoid the $800 cost of buying one. The home runs entirely off-grid, powered by a solar inverter, with water trucked in and stored in a large tank. Here's the twist. She turned it into an Airbnb, nicknamed Underground Hygge. It is now one of the most requested places to stay in the entire state of Washington. When it first opened, nightly rates were around $200 to $250. Today, demand has stayed so strong that nightly rates frequently hit $350 to $400 or more, depending on the season, with guests routinely booking months in advance just to get a slot. She is now expanding the property into an entire Hobbit village with multiple themed Hobbit holes on the same land. That is the moment this stops being just a cute internet trend and becomes a legitimate business model. Maybe you don't want to dig a hole yourself, and you don't want to wait months to book someone else's. That is where prefab Hobbit house companies come in, and this is where the pricing gets interesting. Companies like Wonderful Structures, formerly known as Green Magic Homes, manufacture prefabricated vaulted shell panels built from fiber-reinforced polymer, often shortened to FRP. FRP is a lightweight, composite material reinforced with fiber strands, which makes it strong enough to hold soil and structural load without needing the mass of poured concrete. A small team can assemble the shell of one of these homes in just a few days, then bury it under soil to complete the look. From there, you finish the interior yourself or hire someone to add plumbing, electrical, insulation, and ductwork. As of 2026, there's smaller foundational shell kits, similar to what has been marketed as the California module, generally start around $7,200 to $9,000 for the basic shell alone, not including shipping, land prep, or finishing work. Their larger, multi-bedroom lines, marketed under names like Oasis Bio Homes or Terra Nova, can run anywhere from $47,000 to over $100,000 for the shell components, depending on square footage and layout complexity. Fully custom, turnkey builds finished from the ground up tend to land somewhere between $100 and $200 per square foot, which is actually comparable to or even cheaper than traditional stick-built construction in a lot of markets. The reason these homes can be more efficient than a normal house comes down to basic building science. According to manufacturer structural data, homes built this way can use between 50 and 70% less energy than a conventional home, purely because the surrounding earth acts as a literal thermal buffer against outside temperature swings. That buffer is not coming from the shell material itself. It is coming from the soil layer sitting on top of it. This is a detail most videos gloss over, so let's get specific. The FRP shell panels themselves are thin, often under an inch thick. That thinness is fine, because the shell is not the insulation, it is just the waterproof structural skin. The real insulating power comes from the earth on top of it. Most earth shelter designs call for a minimum of 8 to 12 inches of soil coverage across the roof and berm to get that 50 to 70% energy reduction figure. Any section of the home that is not properly bermed or covered, like an exposed front facade around the door and windows, does not get that natural insulation benefit at all and needs supplemental insulation built in separately, or it becomes a serious thermal leak point, especially in cold climates. That distinction matters a lot if you are planning your own build. It is not enough to just slap a thin composite shell into a hillside and assume you are covered. The soil depth and the coverage of exposed surfaces are doing almost all of the actual insulating work. Okay, here's where we need to slow down, because this is the part that most Hobbit House content on YouTube conveniently skips. First, waterproofing. Because you're essentially burying a structure in soil, waterproofing is not optional. It is the single most important part of the entire build. Get it wrong, and you're looking at mold, water intrusion, and structural damage that is brutally expensive to fix after the fact, because now you have to dig the thing back up just to access the problem. Second, exposed surfaces. As we just covered, any unbermed or poorly buried section of the home, especially around doors and windows, loses the Earth's natural insulation benefit completely. If you live somewhere with harsh, freezing winters, and you do not add real supplemental insulation to those exposed facades, that section becomes a serious cold spot, no matter how efficient the rest of the home is. Third, and this is the big one, financing. Most traditional banks will not issue a standard mortgage on a Hobbit house. If you're planning to make this your primary residence, and you do not have the cash to pay outright, that is a massive hurdle most people do not think about until they're already in love with the idea. Fourth, permits and zoning. Christy Wolf's project only worked because her local county was willing to work with her on a build type that inspectors had essentially never seen before. Other builders have not been so lucky. Zoning laws in a lot of counties simply were not written with earth-sheltered homes in mind, which means you could spend months or longer just fighting for approval before you ever break ground. So here is the hidden catch I promised you at the beginning of this video. A Hobbit house is not just a design choice. It is a financing and permitting gamble. The build itself might genuinely be one of the cheapest, most energy-efficient ways to put a roof, or in this case, a hill, over your head. But if you cannot pay cash, and your county has never approved one before, you could end up spending more time and money on paperwork and cash flow problems than you ever spend on the actual construction. If you're seriously considering this, here is roughly how the process tends to unfold. First, land and site evaluation. Finding a slope with good drainage, since building into a hillside that pools water is asking for the exact moisture problems we just talked about. Second, permitting and engineering review, which can take anywhere from a few weeks in a builder-friendly county to several months or longer somewhere unfamiliar with earth shelter construction. Third, excavation and shell installation, whether that is hand digging like Simondale or bringing in excavators like Christy Wolf. This stage can move surprisingly fast once the ground is open, sometimes just days for a prefab shell. Fourth, waterproofing and soil coverage, the step that determines whether this house lasts decades or develops problems within the first year. And finally, interior finishing, plumbing, electrical, insulation on exposed surfaces, and all the character details that make it feel like a Hobbit actually lives there. Realistically, a motivated DIY builder can be looking at 3 to 6 months from breaking ground to move in, while a prefab route with hired help can sometimes be finished in a matter of weeks once permits are secured. The permitting stage, more than anything else, is usually what determines your real timeline. If you have the land, the cash, or the willingness to do the labor yourself like Simondale did, a Hobbit house can genuinely be one of the most affordable, energy-efficient homes you will ever own. If you're looking at this as an investment property, like Christy Wolf did, the short-term rental demand for these homes is real. People will pay a premium to spend a weekend feeling like they stepped into the Shire. But if you're planning on this being your only home, financed the traditional way, in a county that has never seen a plan like this before, you need to do your homework first. Call your local building department before you fall in love with a design. Ask about earth-sheltered or berm homes specifically, and budget extra time and money for the parts nobody puts in the thumbnail: waterproofing, soil coverage, permits, and financing. If this video saved you from a mistake or got you one step closer to your own Hobbit hole, do me a favor and subscribe, because next week I am breaking down another alternative housing style most people have never even heard of, and the numbers on that one might surprise you even more than this. Drop a comment and tell me, would you actually live underground, or is this strictly an Airbnb weekend kind of home for you? See you in the next one.